Okay, we will start the Ways and Means Committee for Monday, October 25th at 3:30 p.m. So call the meeting to order. The first action item here is to have the approval of the minutes. So I need a motion to approve minutes. All right, Phil and Rachel is the second. Any comments, corrections, clarifications on the minutes? All right. All looks good, so we will go ahead and have a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes with the sign of aye?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed with the sign of nay? All right, that passes unanimously. We have our traditional informational items, so we'll start with the county clerk's office. They've had their report in here, and see Mike's in the room to answer questions and maybe give us an introduction. So Mike, if I could turn it over to you for a minute.
Definitely. So yes, we have our newest member of the team, Sherry Ernst, our Director of Property Taxes and Elections, that started this week. She got her first crash course in tax extension last week and doing great with flying colors, so we're really excited to have her. Has a strong accounting background, and so she'll be a great addition to our team.
Well, welcome to the county and the county team here. Glad to have you.
Then yeah, I can answer any questions if there's any.
Any questions on the information that was provided from the county clerk's packet?
Right now, our revenues are doing very well. We're likely to hit our budget numbers in the next week or two. It's been that strong with everyone refinancing, so we'll likely end up with the year well ahead of our budget.
That's always good to come in ahead of plan on revenues and hit those targets. And I know it's been a very active year, right, on refinance and home ownership changes and some of those fees. Any questions from any of the committee members? All right, any additional comments, Mike, otherwise?
No, that does it.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, we will move on to County Elections Commission, and Mr. Bright is here. So, Tom, welcome, and look forward to an update.
Sure. Just a quick update. We had an initial meeting of the Voting System Evaluation Committee and determined some things. We've got the two vendors coming in. One of them's coming Wednesday, and the other one is coming Friday to give a presentation. So we can see the equipment in person. It also will give us a real good opportunity to ask a whole series of questions. The plan is then after that for the evaluation committee to meet at least one more time to score the results and recommend a selection for the election commission. After that selection by the election commission is done, then the plan will be to come to the county board for the funding component on that, the capital expenditure on that. Just so this entity understands, we're replacing the voting system, but it's at this point we're looking at probably three different components to do that. One of them is actually the voting system, which would be the voting equipment, and then the software to create and tabulate and do all those kind of things. The second component is we have to buy voting booths. The equipment we have now is built into voting booths, but it's going away. So there'll be a second component, which will be we'll go out for bid and get voting booths for going forward, because both systems that we're looking at are a paper-based system. So the majority of voters will vote on an actual paper ballot. They both have a component that deals with that helps voters with disabilities vote on it. That's what's called a ballot marking device. So they vote on a machine, but it also prints out a paper ballot, so that and then that paper ballot is scanned. So it'll be paper either way. But we'll need booths for those voters who are voting on a blank piece of paper. The third component is because we have electronic poll books, which we actually have to have because we're required to do election day registration in all polling places. There'll be a modification to the existing electronic poll books, at least some components of it, to to work with the new voting system and possibly work with the ballot on demand, which we're hoping to do with either system that we select. So that's the timeline, and that's kind of where we're at on the voting system. I did want to give an update. I had a couple conversations this morning. There's some legislation that in Springfield, there's an omnibus bill. It's like a cleanup bill on elections from the spring. Some of it is cleanup from language in when they changed the election date to June. Not every date got changed. Some of the dates that conflict because they changed the major dates, but sometimes they miss some independent filing dates, some slating dates. So there's some cleanup on that. But I think there's also an opportunity, or I think there's a better than decent chance that the state will also change the size of precincts in Illinois. I'm not sure what that number is. Right now, it's kind of two numbers. It's either between 500 and 800 registered voters or no more than, or roughly 600 voters in the last general election, which in Peoria County for most places is roughly the same. It's 600 to 800. I think there's a chance that may double or even triple for the size of the precincts. I'm part of the legislative committee for the Illinois county clerks and recorders, and we've had conversation with legislatures about it. And if you're wondering why, the main reason we're looking to do this is just to allow us to reallocate the resources needed for election. When you have, I'll give you an example, and I don't think we'll hit this next year, but we had 60% of people vote before Election Day in November 2020. It doesn't seem reasonable to have Election Day structured as if 98% of the people are voting when only half of the people are voting. So we can, I think, still do a good job of allowing people to have access to vote on Election Day, but also allocate some of those resources, including election judges and equipment that we use on Election Day, and use them to help handle the size of what early voting has become and the growth of vote by mail. So that's the thinking behind changing the sizes of the precincts if it does happen. So that's all I really have is those two issues.
Any questions from committee members? Thanks, Tom. I guess maybe my thought, just before you run off, if the precinct sizing does get changed, that would mean fewer precincts with more potential voters at each precinct. Will that change our equipment needs as far as the voting equipment kind of correspond with the number of precincts?
It will and it won't. One of the things that we asked for in the RFP was to take into account the possibility that was happening. I think it would reduce, there's a possibility we reduce some of the equipment needed just because we're going to have fewer polling places. It probably isn't as significant as half because we're still going to need to make sure we have plenty of equipment. Plus we need plenty of equipment for early voting and how we address vote by mail. But there is a chance that we can reduce the amount of equipment. And that was the hope, is to have some idea that we could start to reduce this when we started talking about replacing the system 4 and 5 years ago. I was contemplating possibly having vote centers by now. We won't, but it's still in the right direction. And so I think there's an opportunity to reduce the amount of equipment. And the nice thing is we should definitely know, I mean, it's either going to happen in a veto session or it's the end of next spring, which would, at that point, would be too late for. And the push now is because most people haven't done a redistricting. And if you want to do it now so that we're not changing precinct sizes again in 2 years. So.
Okay. No, thank you for the additional comments. Okay, we will move to Supervisor of Assessments Board of Review, Mr. Dave Ryan. Welcome.
Thank you. I'll make it short. I think last time we were here, we talked, we were finishing up our assessments, and when we do that, we send that information down to the state of Illinois, and they do what's called a tentative abstract approval, which they have approved. They just make sure that we are within the 1/3 of the 33.33%. I think They give us a little bit on each end, but I think we were at 33.27% was our tentative abstract of where we should be. So that's good news. And then we've got the border review filing complaint deadline is passed, and we had 451 complaints this year, which is way down from where we're usually at. We're usually at least 800 or 900 complaints. So our number of complaints are way down. This is the first time, though, since I've been here, that we actually have more commercial complaints than we do residential complaints. So that was kind of to be expected because people kind of follow what's happening right now. And if you're following that, the residential sales are going pretty high and they're selling very fast. So we don't have too many of those complaints. As I said, most of them are commercial. And 70% of those complaints that I just mentioned of the 451 are from one person. So, and they do represent a lot of taxpayers. So that's what we've got. So as I said, a little bit of good news on that because it's down, but we do have a lot of commercial, and typically those are much more difficult, and those are typically the ones that go on to the state hearing also.
So the commercial ones may give you more burden on your team to review and go through those, and may have more of a financial impact on the tax rolls or EAV.
Yeah, that's correct because they
of the
take
volume
a lot longer to work because you usually just don't go out and find 3 other sales of something like a commercial property. Sometimes you've got to actually call other counties. I had one other county call me today trying to get information from us. So it is much more difficult to do those and takes a lot more time.
Okay. Any questions, Jennifer?
Is it anticipated the increase in commercial complaints is because they're all represented by the one individual, or do you know why, or do you have a guess as to why there's an increase in commercial?
He usually does a lot of commercial properties because typically his model is to take 50% of the savings. So he's just taking, he's going to go for higher end property because you make more money that way. Secondly is because of COVID, I'm sure that some more commercial properties have filed complaints because, you know, they may have been shut down for a while or they may have suffered some decreased income. So we expected some more commercial properties because of that. So it could be those 2 reasons are the main reasons probably that the commercial has probably exceeded the a little bit more than typical, but it's really just exceeded the residential. The residential is so far down that our commercial may not be a big increase. It's just comparatively speaking it is. So.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Ryan? All right. Thank you, Dave.
All right, thank you.
We will move now to the treasurer, the keeper of our money, Ms. Bjorky. We'll get an update on how we're doing with our savings and our spendings.
So I just did my 5th distribution for taxes, and I distributed $23.6 million. So total distribution so far is $315.7 million to 150 districts. This is my favorite time of year, which is fall, but this is my least favorite time as far as work because we send out delinquent notices. And these are all the people who have either forgotten to pay or not able to pay or thought that their escrow paid or something. So we sent out 4,597 notices, which is less than last year. Last year was 5,002. Currently, we're at 3,639 parcels that have not paid either one installment or both. Last year's tax sale, the parcel count was at 1,862, so we still have 1,800 parcels that we need to collect to get down to that. Tax sale is November 8th. It's going to be up here, but we're doing it, we did it last year as what they call a Rams 2. So instead of tax buyers coming in and sitting at the horseshoe and bidding with the computer, they bring a flash drive that has their bid of what they're willing to bid on that property, and then they just drop it off to the trustee who runs our sale. They upload the file, and then they give it back, and then the next one goes, and the next one goes, and at the end, it's kind of random if they all bid the same. So that it's COVID results, I guess, because of COVID last year, we had to figure out a different way to do it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having last year's tax sale till this year. So this is what we decided to do. The sale lasts 45 minutes instead of 7 hours, so I'm much more in favor of this. The problem with this is it results in a whole bunch of new buyers. So we have 41 tax buyers right now, and today is the deadline. We usually have about 20 to 21. So because of the way it's done, there's some buyers that submit more than one buyer. So there is legislation out there that we can do a single buyer. We did not do it this year. We will be doing it next year. The next real estate distribution is in December, and then the interest is in December, and then we are done. So, any questions?
Questions from the committee? Land banking, how does that kind of, maybe you could educate us how that timing and communication of the land bank discussion with the city fits into this, or may not fit into it today?
It doesn't really fit in with it today. We have another meeting set up for next month, so it's a monthly meeting of a committee that I'm on. We're meeting virtually for about an hour, and right now we're pretty much discussing the merits and the benefits of the land bank and what it means and how properties are going to be in there and the uses and things like that. So it's kind of really informational right now. The city did ask for some properties off the trustee auction, and so they were given those. So the city provides a list of what they own, and if they're able to sell it off to somebody like a neighbor or something like that. But it's kind of slow going right now, just to get everybody up to speed on it.
Okay, thank you. One more chance. Any questions from the committee? No? All right, thank you, Nicole. Veterans Assistance Commission, I don't see Mr. Brooks here today, so I don't have any special report from him. So unless we received one, we will get him next month when he's available, or get a reports. With that, we'll move into our one resolution, the monthly delinquent taxes. So there's several properties on this month's agenda, so we need a motion to put it on the floor. Jennifer is the first. Junior is the second. Okay, we have it on the floor. Any questions about the properties and the resolution of the delinquent taxes? Okay, no questions. So all in favor with the sign of aye?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed with the sign of nay? All right, passes unanimously. We're into miscellaneous. Any miscellaneous items for today's meeting? It's all quiet. I'm going to beat Rob Renault's turnaround time today. You have to tell him that. All right, meeting adjourned.
Hey, good job.